What about you made this other statement? The greatest foreign enemy of the USA is not Russia, and I've been saying this for a long time. I guess it's not Qatar either in your mind, but you said the greatest foreign enemy is China, and they're invading us right now. How are they doing that?
Right. China. Now, again, not Chinese, because remember, Chinese is a big thing. It's like there's a lot of Chinese that will never go to China and don't want to go to China, have never been to China. There's Chinese in Panama that have lived there for 7 generations, right? And so there's Chinese all over the world. They've got like a meta structure, right, which is like no country, but then there's the Chinese Communist Party, right? And I've been to China. I've been all over the place in China, and I've been Tibet and all over the place. Beijing, Shanghai, all these Xi'an, so many Kunming, and a lot of the Chinese people are quite good people, very good people. But the Chinese government, like many governments, is predatory towards the Chinese people, and they're ascendant at this point, and they're playing professional victim, right? The Chinese Communist Party, I mean. They're playing, and I go to so many museums around the world because I study museum warfare. So I went over to Nanjing as an example. I went to the Nanjing Museum about, I don't know, 10 years ago. And it's all about hatred to Japanese, super hatred, right? They're developing that hatred. They were bringing in busloads of children to go to see the museum. I was the only white guy there, right? And I was welcome. It was everything, but I know what I'm seeing because I study psychological operations. I study information war, right? It's clear that the Chinese Communist Party at some point is going to go to war with Japan. It's crystal clear, right? Because I've never seen a war that I've studied or been in that didn't radiate a lot of information in advance that something was going to happen. Like you'll have the government, like say the U.S. government or the Israeli government or some government, a German government, Canadian. They'll be developing animosity towards some targeted group that they're gonna go after much later, right? And sometimes it's generations later. It's not always like next week. It can be it's like planting a tree, right? And right now. And I think about 10 years ago, I wrote a dispatch called the Hate Farm, I think, and China is planting a bitter harvest. And that was after my last trip to China when I went to Nanjing and other places, and I was going to the museums. And so I wrote that dispatch called The Hate Farm, China is Planting a Bitter Harvest. And I went there specifically on that trip to China to look at the museums, because that's where you can pick up the trailhead of the information war. What are the people trying to get the people fired up? Because what you do is you get the journalists to go to the museums, you get it in the stories, you make movies, and you go to China, and every night in most places I never watch TV, but when I travel to a place like China, I'll turn the TV on in the hotel, and in the hotel room, and every night it was 2 movies that were anti-Japan. And again, because the Chinese people don't want to fight Japan, but they can be made to want to fight Japan. What you do is you create hatred. And how do you create hatred? Hatred has 2 ingredients. It has disgust and anger. That's like H2O. That's the hydrogen and oxygen is disgust and anger. So if you can make someone disgusted and angry, and you just keep showing their face of your target, disgust and anger, those will combine into hatred. Now you can make somebody angry doesn't really hate you, or you can make somebody disgusted and they don't really hate you, right? But if you do anger and disgust, one of the things that will do that is rape. Like when people see somebody, accused of rape, it's easy to create hatred towards the person who does that. So China is always accusing Japan of rape, right? Mass rape and that sort of thing, right? And so these museums are all about that, right? And that's what my 3
When you
books
go
are
to
about.
Korea, though, they're very sensitive on that issue. They feel that they've been victims, of that rape. Do you say that's propaganda, or is it true?
Hardcore propaganda. In fact, I'm very dialed in on that history. I spent a lot of time in Korea looking at this. And it's called the comfort women issue. In Japanese, it's called ianfu, right? It's a comfort women. And actually, of course, in Korea used to be part of Japan. In fact, there were Koreans that were, it was fully part of Japan. The Koreans, just like Texas, is part of the United States, right? 1905, 1910, of course, annexed. And then Koreans were full Japanese citizens, right? And there were generals in the Imperial Japanese Army in World War II. They were generals. They were elected officials and that sort of thing. And I've asked many of the Koreans, and I would tell Koreans, you realize you're actually a target. The CCP is the one running that information off. That's not organic to Korea. And I warned the Koreans many, many times that you are actually being targeted with this. What's actually happening is CCP, Chinese Communist Party, is trying to split Korea and Japan apart. And they're trying to split our defense triangle, Korea, Japan, United States. They're trying to split us apart, right? And so if they successfully split Korea and Japan, which they did with a court decision in 2019, they actually split Korea and Japan. They stopped sharing intelligence. They stopped doing military exercises. And it was all about the Ianfu thing. It was all about the comfort women issue, right? And you go to Korea, there was a comfort women statue right in front of the Japanese embassy, and there was people camped out beside it for all the time, rain and shine. I was there with them for 3 weeks, right? And these comfort women statues that are like in Glendale, California, and near Atlanta, I've been to many of them. I've been to the ones, and I met the husband and wife who make them. I had lunch with them in Seoul, in downtown, and they were introduced to me by the organization that actually runs it, and so they were making $30,000 per statue. That's how much every comfort women statue costs, $30,000. What they do is they put a statue up, they get a bunch of media about it, and they always say, the Japanese conservatives are attacking us and threatening us. It's cookie cutter, right? And they get a lot of publicity. They do fundraisers and this sort of thing. But what it's really about is to get hatred stoked up against Japan and to split our relations. And it's been quite successful.